time last night.
What do you want to talk to your colleagues about when it comes to bail reform?
When it comes to bail reform, we need to, greatly stiffen the sentence, not only for those repeat offenders, but for those that are bringing these poisonous drugs into our communities across Canada. Drugs are very much the scourge of many of the social problems and the cause of many of the social problems that we're having. It has changed over the last decade, and we need to change the Criminal Code of Canada to address the changes that we're seeing in our communities. In addition to that, I would say, and we're doing this in Saskatchewan as rapidly as we can, is we need to provide recovery opportunities for those that unfortunately have entered a life of addictions.
One of the problems we have in Ontario is that the jails are really full. Do you have a similar problem in Saskatchewan?
We're building new jails.
How many new?
Building one additional at a time, and we need to house people that are breaking the law, but we need to arrest them and put them in there as well, and that's changes that we need to the Criminal Code of Canada.
Did you talk to the Prime Minister yesterday about bail reform as well?
I don't know that he's here today. We have talked to him in days gone by and in the initial letter that we had sent, and it did come up yesterday in our conversations as well. It is, there's a lot of things going on, internationally, and many things going on nationally and in each of our relative provinces as well. But when we look at Canada and North America, the efforts that we need to make to keep our communities safe in a changing environment are very real. And I think the Prime Minister has an ear to this.
Has he made any commitments about bail reform?
I'll leave the commitments to the Prime Minister when it comes to changes of the Criminal Code of Canada. If it was a Criminal Code of Saskatchewan, we would have made those changes already. But we would look forward to maybe changes being introduced as early as this fall. That would be a positive, I believe, for enhancing and helping communities stay safe for years into the future and to keep Canadians safe.
And what do you want that legislation to look like? Yeah.
What it looked like?
Yeah.
Well, I think for starters, for any repeat violent offenders, the consequences of their action could have far greater time sentence, time served. I'd also like to see the increases in the consequences for individuals that are bringing poisonous drugs, fentanyl, crystal meth, into our nation, into our province of Saskatchewan, and into our communities. It very much is at the heart of some of the homelessness challenges that we're having, largely in our urban centres, but not exclusive to our urban centres. Some of the vandalism, property crimes that are happening that are really happening to support, unfortunately, a life of addictions. And so the drugs have certainly changed in the power that they have over people in the last decade. We have to change the Criminal Code of Canada to address what we're facing as a society today.
Is there a point to this conversation if the Prime Minister is not there? I mean, it seems a lot of the Premiers are on the same page about this.
We've already moved in every aspect that we feel we can outside of the Criminal Code of Canada, increasing consequences for people that are bringing drugs into our communities. We've opened up laneway for municipalities to act as well to address some of the challenges that they're seeing and that their police services and their businesses and families are seeing on the very front lines in urban communities across this province. But the significant change that will have significant consequences for people that are bringing these poisonous drugs into our communities is a change to the Criminal Code of Canada. And for any repeat offenders as well. That's why I think it's been asked for, not only by the premiers, but also by organizations like the Chiefs of Police, as well as others.
Back to that trade deal that was announced yesterday morning, are all First Nations communities on board in your province to allow the free flow of goods and services back and forth?
There's been significant discussion, not only about the free flow of goods back and forth into our communities, and listen, we operate under the New West Partnership in Saskatchewan, which goes far beyond the Canada Free Trade Act. And I would say even goes maybe even far beyond some of the memorandum of understandings that are being signed here this week. But we're supportive of all the steps in opening up trade, not only interprovincially, and we would say the next logical step is for all provinces to consider signing on to the New West Partnership. It is a far more expansive agreement when it comes to regulatory barriers that we may have or differences that we may have between provinces and how we align those. The recognition of credentials for professionals in various areas of expertise across the Western provinces. There's avenues for that to be recognized, and we would ask for that to be extended across Canada to benefit all Canadians. The larger conversation that we're having, not only with with all communities, but also Indigenous communities, is how do we develop the resources in Saskatchewan, provide them to the world through a port-to-port corridor that obviously in Western Canada's case would open up European and Asian markets. And how do we do that to ensure that we're being as inclusive as possible? Having a positive impact on those areas of the world where those resources are being developed or maybe being transported through as they find their way to providing energy security, food security for other Canadians, North Americans, or one of the 161 countries that we export currently to.
Do you know if any of Saskatchewan's resources are coming up in negotiations with the U.S.?
About 95% of what we produce in Saskatchewan is USMCA compliant. And that's important to note. And so about 5% would be subject to the so-called 35% tariffs that were announced a while ago. And I think that speaks, I think many provinces would have a similar ratio, maybe slightly different, but it does speak to what Saskatchewan does produce. We provide food and fuel and fertilizer, food and energy security to not only other Canadians, but to Americans and to, as I say, over 160 countries around the world. We want to continue doing that, and we want to expand the value of what we are actually exporting, including to the U.S.
Do you feel like Mr. Carney tried to lower expectations regarding the trade deal with the U.S.?
Well, we're just talking about interprovincial trade barriers where we have regulatory indifferences and such, and really those are non-financial tariffs that would be in place. And so any trade agreement that you have, including the current USMCA or previous NAFTA, they have either tariff or financial or non-financial really tariff barriers. So any agreement is going to have some degree of tariff barriers. We just saw the U.S. sign in principle, I think, an agreement with Japan for a kind of across-the-board tariff and then some varying numbers by industry. What we would hope for is to have no tariffs, or at least the lowest tariffs on all the commodities that we can possibly have with our largest trading partner, the United States of America. If we can achieve that, we can achieve some stability and some certainty. And I think you add to that, cleaning up some of the regulatory environment we have to be able to build the mine sites, the oil production plants, and build really our nation in a much quicker fashion than what we are able to today. Bill C-5 is a good start. It's a stopgap. It essentially is a piece of legislation that is legislating through the regulatory environment that we have in Canada. And so while Bill C-5 is allowing some projects to move, we need to work hard. And I would say that to some degree that work's already started with Minister Hodgson. We need to work hard to clean up and streamline the regulatory environment that we have in Canada. If we are going to be a serious landing place for global investment, if we are going to take a serious run at being the strongest economy in the G7, or in any way achieving the Prime Minister's aspirations of becoming a global energy superpower. The challenges in Canada are well reported on by you folks and many others. The opportunities are there, and I would say that we're facing one of the largest opportunities as Canadians that I have seen in my political career and maybe in my life. And I certainly am going to do my level best to ensure that we can achieve it in Saskatchewan and by extension across the nation.
Are the premiers, though, okay with giving the Prime Minister a longer runway for these negotiations if the first deal presented isn't one that the Prime Minister is comfortable
Well, we need a good deal. And the runway's been extended a few times now. And if you can predict, some of the wishes or what the President might say today, tomorrow, or next week, I could probably answer that question with a lot more certainty. We have Dominic LeBlanc, as I believe was on his way to Washington yesterday. We'll be meeting again with either Jamieson Greer or Secretary Lutnick today. I have confidence with Dominic being down in Washington. He's a liberal that has, I think, a good relationship with the Republicans in the Trump administration. And so we're there to support him. And we're there to support Prime Minister Carney not only in the U.S. market, as he is the Prime Minister, but to support him as best we can in a number of other markets around the world. And herein lies, the great balancing act is, how do you strike a free and fair trade agreement with the U.S. and preserve the access to the global markets that we have? And I'll use Saskatchewan as an example. About 50, and we're the highest exporting area in North America per capita. About $30 billion goes to the U.S. About $20 billion goes to 160 other countries around the world. So we're very globally diverse. And that's the opportunity that Canada has, I think, moving forward. If we're able to clean up our regulatory environment, not reduce it, but clean it up so that we can actually achieve functioning, producing projects in all industries in our nation. Ensure we can get those industries, the product that we produce to port, to saltwater port, and then ensure that we're preserving that market access with the U.S. and other countries around the world. If we do that, If we do that, the investments that we want to make as Canadians through the federal government, of, for example, a 5% investment in our military to ensure that we are safe in Canada and safe in North America. If we are able to open up laneway and runway for every industry to expand and create value, we'll have a lot of credibility as Canadians when it comes to budget day and making those investments.
I understand that the healthcare transfers are going to be a subject today. What are your expectations in terms of increasing the budgets?
Well, you know, in a post-pandemic environment, and all provinces would have significant increases in the last number of years in their healthcare budgets. I think we were 11 last year, or 2 years ago, 9 in the year previous. Those are not sustainable moving forward. So we need to work together to ensure that the investments that are being made are being seen by the patient in advanced care, advanced time of that care, whether it be a surgery or just access to a primary health care provider. With respect to the federal transfers, we would hope that they're not trimmed. They're far below those percentage increases that I gave you, and the federal government, successive federal governments have been slipping with respect to where they started as a percentage funder of health care. So I would ask really for two things when it comes to any federal transfers, healthcare or any of the federal transfers that are there. One is that they don't slip. Two is that they have flexibility built into them so that we can deliver on a province-by-province basis the services that Canadians like. All too often in years gone by, recent years gone by, we've seen a shrinking investment in things like healthcare, but very much an expansion of the federal influence and where those dollars are funding, and that just simply doesn't work from coast to coast to coast. Things are very different in the territories versus the prairies versus Atlantic Canada versus some of our more populated provinces like British Columbia, Ontario, or Quebec.
Would you be okay waiting until 2026 for the CUSMA renegotiation to land a new trade deal with the U.S.?
Well, we need a good trade deal first and foremost. I would say we need it as soon as possible, but it needs to be a good trade deal. And so, again, there's going to be a lot of back and forth with, whether it be Prime Minister Carney and President Trump, or whether it be with, Secretary Lutnick and Dominic LeBlanc. We're going to support them in all of those discussions on the various industries that are there. We've seen, some of the, I'd say, the morphing or the setting of the boundaries of that trade deal with the removal of the digital service tax, things of that nature. I think it's less about the date and more about the content of the conversation that is happening. And we certainly, to the earlier question, would shoot for a zero tariff across the board on each and every product. That's the goal. But we certainly need to ensure that we have lower tariffs than any other country, given the relationship that we have with the United States.
Should we give up supply management?
Oh no, I don't think we should be talking about giving up anything when it comes to the negotiations with the U.S. What we want to do is actually expand our opportunities.
You famously stormed out of a meeting years ago after, I think it was with the Liberal government, or was it ministers? I can't remember.
It was environment ministers.
Yes, environment ministers. You famously stormed out of that.
Well, I walked out. I had nothing more to say.
How does it compare working with Carney as opposed to the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Well, one of the reasons myself and 2 or 3 other ministers had left that meeting, it was the introduction of the carbon tax after there was a commitment that they wouldn't be moving forward with unconsulted policies that would just be imposed on provinces, and that wasn't the way that particular policy came in. And again, it was sold as a policy that we wouldn't need to do anything else. This is the panacea that would solve climate change for the world if Canada would just move forward. You then saw very much a layering of other policies on top of that, which have in turn have created some of the regulatory challenges that we have today. And so those are 10 lost years that we have when it comes to attracting investment into Saskatchewan and Canada. And so we were right in our policy perspective at that point in time. That's been proven to be so now with the removal of the carbon tax by Prime Minister Carney. And to compare the relationship from Saskatchewan, and I think you can very much see a change in tone from myself, given the last 10 years versus now, is it's very much more engaging. And very much more open to, how do we create wealth not only in your province, but how do we work together to create wealth across this nation by developing the industries that we have, getting them to market, and getting maximum value through our market access with the USA and many other countries around the world. And so, the appreciation that we have is the engagement that Prime Minister Carney has had with the provinces, and I would say particularly ourselves with Saskatchewan. And it's real engagement. It's not just a meeting to say you had a meeting. It's real engagement about where are the challenges and where are the hurdles and where can we remove some of those hurdles together. And we may not agree on everything, but we need to work together as Canadians, and we are Canadians first, and that's the level best effort that we are giving on behalf of Saskatchewan. The second thing I would say is I appreciate that commitment to engaging with the provinces. Likewise, we have had 10 lost years with respect to our reputation in the international space. Prime Minister Carney, I think, has met already with literally dozens of international leaders, enhancing our reputation in a positive way in that international space. And it has felt pretty lonely out there, as Saskatchewan has been in that space for the last decade. And we most certainly are appreciative of the prioritization that this Prime Minister Carney is giving to all of those international markets and bringing some credibility to those markets. And I most notably would say that, in the case of a lot of talk is about the United States of America. Saskatchewan largely is being impacted by a counter tariff from China. Prime Minister Carney has been very engaging with the country of China and is working through how you engage with that country, and we're working, I would say, alongside with them, providing the advice that we've had from years gone by, as we've had an office in China for a decade and a half now.
Well, Premier Moe, those tariffs are in place because Ontario asked for 100% tariffs on electric vehicles coming out of China. I mean, we've talked.
Well, they're in place because we tried to align with U.S. policy when it comes to the North American relationship with China on not just EV vehicles, but steel and aluminum as well. And so, when we have a steel plant in Saskatchewan, probably 5,000 or 6,000 people that are entirely dependent on the steel industry. And so when we see the most recent changes impacting some of the steel coming into North America or into Canada, we're supportive on behalf of the steel workers that we have in Saskatchewan, but we're very concerned as well as what any counter response might be, because it often impacts Saskatchewan or Canadian agriculture, which is largely Saskatchewan agriculture. And so that's why it's so important to be engaging with the Chinese government, of which Prime Minister Carney and his government is doing, unlike I would say that they've done in the last decade. And if we're truly going to, move and expand our reliance away from the United States in any way, shape, or form, and I would suggest the only way to do it is on additional products produced, not existing, we're going to have to deal with China. And so we're going to need a broader relationship with them. And so I see past, the current disputes that we have. I'm very concerned about what the retaliatory impacts might be to an industry that is really the spinal cord of the economy in Saskatchewan. But the true path through that is engagement with the Chinese government, and that's happening as we speak.
Thanks, that's it. That's all for today. Thanks, everyone.
That's fine.
Thank you.
One of my text messages.
Good morning, Premier.
Good morning, Olivia.
What do you want to speak to
Thank you very
your
much.
colleagues about when it comes to bail reform? What do you want to see?
Well, we've had a lot of conversations about bail reform, actually, and I think we're all on the same page, having all signed a letter, I think, back at a previous meeting, and we were encouraged to hear from the Prime Minister yesterday that it's something that they're working through now. So I think that the progress has been made, and the ball is in the federal government's court.
And what did they promise? What did the Prime Minister promise?
Well, he told us it was in the works. There's legislative changes that need to be made that I think we're hoping that come in the fall session, and so that was what we learned.
And what exactly do you want to see in that legislation?
Well, we need to have the flexibility at the provincial level to be tough on the people who are hard on Canadians, and so we need to be able to put in place the kinds of restrictions, limits on bail and probation in order to make sure that the people who are doing bad things are paying for it.
Are you on the same page as the Progressive Conservative premiers on bail reform, would you say, as a Liberal premier?
I think that all of the premiers signed the same letter calling for the same thing from the federal government.
Are you guys looking for essentially people not getting a bail review or a bail hearing if they're repeat offenders? Is that the avenue that you guys are pushing for here?
Oh, I'd have to look at my number one issue for New Brunswickers is healthcare, so that's what's on my mind right now, having just met with the Canadian Medical Association and the Canadian Nurses Association, and so those technical details I'd have to brush up on.
Sur les transferts en santé, qu'est-ce que vous demandez au juste, parce qu'on sait que vous n'avez pas obtenu ce que vous demandiez dans les derniers accords, qu'est-ce que vous demandez au juste? Vous demandez une augmentation des transferts en santé?
Oui, absolument. Les augmentations qu'on voit au niveau provincial, nos investissements dans la santé, ils augmentent dans grand nombre, mais les investissements du gouvernement fédéral ne montent pas du même niveau. Alors, on se trouve plus loin de l'objectif d'assurer que chaque Néo-Brunswickois, chaque Canadien a accès aux soins de santé qu'il mérite. Alors, on veut voir que les transferts montent avec le besoin et la pression.
Avez-vous une demande chiffrée concernant ces transferts?
Pas un chiffre spécifique à ce point. Nous autres,
5%, est-ce que c'est quelque chose?
ça serait une bonne chose, mais nous autres aussi, on veut qu'il y ait une reconnaissance qu'il y a des différents besoins. Nous autres, au Nouveau-Brunswick, on a une population plus âgée, qui est plus malade. C'est pas de même que le service qu'on a besoin pour quelqu'un de 30 ans dans une autre province. Alors, on veut que les transferts sont reconnaissants de la population et les besoins en santé de la population.
Mais vous avez tous besoin du gouvernement fédéral pour des contrats en défense. On a vu ça hier. C'est quoi votre rapport de force maintenant pour demander des choses au fédéral?
Bien, nous autres sommes sur le terrain, puis nous sommes ceux qui livrent le service aux Néo-Brunswickois puis aux Canadiens. Alors, le partenariat, c'est vraiment important. Il y a plusieurs choses que le gouvernement fédéral peut faire pour... Bien, c'est ça, mais on a s'il veut dire aux Canadiens qu'il ne veut pas supporter leur accès aux soins de santé, qu'il ne veut pas être un partenaire dans l'enjeu primordial pour les personnes de ma province, je serais intéressée de savoir cette conversation.
M. Legault a laissé entendre hier que compte tenu du déficit probable que le fédéral va avoir avec les investissements en défense, etc., ce serait un peu illusoire de penser qu'on aurait des transferts, une augmentation des transferts en santé.
Mais pour nous autres, on a un déficit en Nouveau-Brunswick parce qu'on a choisi d'investir dans les Néo-Brunswickois et Néo-Brunswickoises et dans leur santé, parce que sans une population en bonne santé, on ne peut pas avoir une économie en bonne santé. Alors, je pense que les deux choses vont ensemble.
Le fédéral fait des déficits pour les pays transferts en santé.
Nous autres, on veut qu'ils trouvent la façon de gérer le système pour qu'on a une population qui a un bien-être, qui peut aller à notre économie avec un bien-être. Alors, ça va ensemble. On doit trouver les façons de faire la croissance de notre économie avec des projets d'intérêt national qui vont nous aider à agrandir notre PIB en tant que faire des investissements dans la santé de la population qui fait ce travail-là.
Do you think the current health transfers is unfair than to smaller provinces, the current formula?
We certainly think that they should respond to the population's needs. Right now, it's a flat per capita model, but as I said, in New Brunswick, we have a population that is older and that is sicker than the rest of Canada, and so we think that the transfers should respond to the needs of Canadians.
Should the bigger provinces subsidize the smaller then?
I think that we should meet Canadians' needs for health care, and we know that it costs more to service somebody who has a chronic health issue and somebody who is later in life. And so we think that the transfer should recognize that older and sicker Canadians need more investment, and we happen to have more of those people in New Brunswick.
A local question from New Brunswick. Why did you decide to apologize to Margaret Ann Blaine and not fight the ruling?
Well, because there was errors made in the past. It wasn't the right way to do things. To fire people for partisan reasons is part of why I got into politics, was to do things differently and move away from partisan petty politics to doing the right thing. And so we abide by the ruling. We're going to apologize, and things like that won't happen again on my watch.
How productive have the meetings been so far, and are premiers united?
Oh, I think the premiers actually have a lot more unity today than I saw in the first meeting that for me wasn't that many months ago. In part because the threat from the U.S. is so serious that it demands a unified response, but we're all facing the same challenges, right? We all have economic crisis that we need to address. We need the nation to be together for us all to benefit from that. And so I think that the conversations over the last 2 days have been really productive. There's a real desire to support each other, to learn from each other, and to work with a federal government that is showing a desire for collaboration and partnership that I don't think we've seen for a while.
Okay, so thanks everyone.
Do you have on my staff?
Morning, how are you?
Did you get an update from the Prime Minister from the letter you gave him from Bailey McCourt's family?
No, I haven't had an update yet from the Prime Minister. I gave it to him just yesterday. But I certainly do hope to see a response in the form of criminal justice reform in the fall. Particularly, I know he's committed to that, and I want to make sure that intimate partner violence is a part of his considerations around bail reform.
What did the letter say? Can you give us a sense?
Yeah, the letter outlined a number of policy recommendations about, especially if a violent partners are released, that they're tracked by GPS so that the victim is able to identify if the person is coming close to them. A registry, bail reform, a number of policy recommendations from the family.
Is there anything your province can do on its own to address this issue?
Yes, in fact, we've been working on that. We had a report by Dr. Stanton on intimate partner violence and gender-based violence, how our court system can be improved, what we can do provincially on that. We're implementing those recommendations. And we've been working with groups that work with women who have been assaulted by partners or threatened by partners around their recommendations as well. It's been an ongoing piece of work for us, but at the end of the day, in terms of the criminal justice system, we do look to the federal government for assistance.
And your colleagues are calling for the emissions cap to be scrapped. What do you think of that? Do you agree with them?
Well, it's important for us as a country to recognize that climate change is a real thing. We have seen devastating wildfires across the country. The world is going to have to shift to a low-carbon future. The federal government has put in place the emissions cap, which is important for us in British Columbia. We've had similar discussions in our province. If the feds are going to shift position, we'd like to know about it well in advance. And because British Columbia is dependent on what's happening in the rest of the country.
The Trump administration, according to sources that I've spoken with, they don't like your emotional response to the trade war. They think that you are being too whiny. What's your take on, their reaction to, I guess, your comments recently? Yesterday, comment on Pete Hoekstra. A few months ago, you're standing in front of the legislature with all the MLAs talking about the U.S.-Canada relationship. I guess, what's your reaction to their particular feelings toward you out of the other premiers?
Yeah, I think, I stand as a proud Canadian, and I don't think I stand alone in demanding that the U.S. respect us as an independent country, that they quit their threats to our economy, to our hardworking families, and that we will not drink their alcohol or visit their country until they quit it.
On the National Wildfire Strategy, if that was in place, what you guys are calling for this year, how would it have affected BC's response? What would it have helped you to do?
Well, we're a cautious supporter of the federal government getting involved in wildfire. It's important that we have interoperability between different fire services across the country. The federal government can assist with that. The caution that we have is the closer you get to the ground, the more effective the fire service is, in my experience. And our provincial wildfire force works very closely with other provincial wildfire teams, as we saw in Manitoba and in Saskatchewan. And we're going to continue to work closely with them. There is a potential role for the federal government, but I want to make sure that it adds and it doesn't create bureaucracy or delay.
Would it be about funding then? Because there's already exchange services in place, right? We see it every year.
Yeah, I think my focus would really be on making sure that there's a set of standards across the country that we're all following, that the fire services are able to work together quite seamlessly, particularly that they're able to work with the military, and that the military plays a role wherever they can, and that the training's in place for them. And so, I think it's a limited role, but it could be a significant role.
Come back to U.S. trade negotiations. Have you abandoned at all the idea of imposing counter tariffs?
No, not at all. I'm fully supportive of retaliation against the Americans where that has a very low or no impact on Canadians. I think we need to keep in mind that this administration is already flailing a fair bit. Their economy is slowing, inflation is going up, it will collapse under its own weight. We just need to give it some time. But in the meantime, if we can help push things along, then we should, but we shouldn't do it at the expense of Canadians who are already feeling huge pressure.
Would you cut off electricity to the western states?
Would you like to see the bail reform? What are you looking for in that new legislation expected this fall?
Well, we have to toughen up bail reform, and we can't release people the same the next day after they kick people's doors in, put guns to people's head, terrorize the neighborhood, terrorize families, and they get in the back of the police vehicle and they start mocking our police, and then they go to some weak-kneed judge that lets them out. It's absolutely terrible, and we need mandatory sentences. You steal cars, you break into people's homes, there has to be a penalty, or they just keep repeating the offense, and people are done. It's not just they're out on bail once, they'll be out 4 or 5 times. I talked to a father that is after one person was out on bail for drinking and driving 5 times. Now his son's has serious brain injuries at Sunnybrook Hospital. We never know if he's going to be the same because this drunk driver kept getting released. That's one out of 1,000 stories that happens constantly, and the judges can. And it's not about Bill C-75. We have to toughen it up, but it's people are just fed up. I've never seen people more frustrated ever.
Do you have any proposals for certain mandatory minimums, like a car theft or?
Well, I would like to look in comparable areas. Let's look at the U.S. What happens when someone steals a car in Michigan or in Florida? That's what we need to do. And if you do that, there's consequences. I'll tell you, the car thefts that were leading North America. People talk about crime in the U.S. We're beating every single major city in the U.S. on car thefts.
On Mark Carney, Premier, you seem all happy with the Prime Minister yesterday, but can we expect a harder language today on health transfers, for instance?
Well, I've always said it doesn't matter if it's Mark Carney or the previous Prime Minister. We got shortchanged as far as I'm concerned. We said last time it was a good down payment. And the way we've seen the increase in population, we've seen an increase in health needs. We need to continue to hire more doctors and nurses. We need a fair chunk of money. I just want to speak to the people of Ontario on equalization and transfer payments. At the end of the day, goes into one big pot. We're giving $26 billion of Ontario's hard-earned taxpayers money over the federal government. I've always said I have no problem taking care of the smaller provinces and the territories, but in saying that, we need our fair share with healthcare. We spend $93 billion a year in healthcare in Ontario.
What would be a fair increase in transfer?
Well, it's more than what they gave us last time. It was about 1.5%. I'd have to get it, but it was just a little over 1%. That's unacceptable because we're seeing the need grow continuously in healthcare. So I'd like to sit down, the rest of the premiers, come up with a figure that would sustain us for the next little while.
What would be this figure, Mr.
Change the formula so that it is not per capita, instead it's based on need, like the age of the population or the sickness, which would presumably involve Ontario giving more money to places like New Brunswick.
Well, I have no problem taking care of the smaller provinces. I've always said that. But overall, we're giving $26 billion more to the federal government than what we're getting back. And I don't think that's fair. I think it works out to be approximately $1,700 per person that is costing Ontarians.
Do you plan to go back to the White House anytime soon?
Well, we'll see what happens. That's up to the federal government, up to Minister LeBlanc and Prime Minister to go there and discuss.
Would you be okay waiting until 2026 next year for the CUSMA renegotiation to land a new trade deal with the U.S.?
I have no problem, but I don't trust President Trump as far as I can throw him. He constantly changes his mind. It's you just don't know who you're dealing with. He signed that deal with Japan at what was it, $550 billion they're investing. Last time I checked, Japan they buy about $79 billion of products off the U.S. We buy about $349 billion of products. So Japan and the rest of the countries around the world have quite a bit to catch up to what we purchase off the U.S.
There's a lot of talk about trade and Trump and building Canada, but what were the tangible results, do you think, coming out of this meeting?
Well, I think unity is one thing. We're all united. I haven't seen that, Colin, ever since I've been Premier.
You guys were united coming into this meeting.
Yeah, but I mean overall, and looking at diversifying our markets, building pipelines until we aren't beholden on the U.S., and making sure that we can get our products around the world, no matter if it's the oil or our SMRs, small modular reactors, and quite a few other areas, our critical minerals, to ship around the world.
If we don't get an August 1st deal, would you like to see our counter tariffs on steel and aluminum raised to 50%?
Yeah, to match the U.S., we have to. First of all, we have to get rid of all the other steel products, cheap steel products being shipped in from China with a sticker on it, be it made in Pakistan or made in Turkey. That's where we're seeing a lot of steel coming from. They're proxies for China. And I have no problem with those countries, but don't stick a made in Pakistan sticker on it and then ship it across and undercut our hardworking steel workers.
All right, thanks everyone.
You've always said that
Last one.
China is the enemy. Yet Scott Moe says that there needs to be increased cooperation with China. A news release that you guys had issued yesterday said that there needs to be a better working relationship on trade with China. That's specifically what the premiers were calling on the Prime Minister to do. So help me reconcile those two things. Is China the enemy, or do we work with China?
Well, you know what Churchill said. Our enemy of our enemy is our friend, and I don't consider Americans enemy, but right now President Trump himself is acting like the enemy. We do about $43 billion of two-way trade with China, Ontario alone. We import over $40 billion, we export $3 billion. As long as China plays fair and doesn't undercut our markets, be it the auto sector or any sector, I have no problem dealing with them, because we're already dealing with them, and every one of us go in the store and we buy Chinese products every single day, not even knowing that they're coming from China.
Does that mean removing the 100% tariff on Chinese-made EVs?
No.
All right.
No, I got to protect our EV sector.
Thanks everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Gotta go.
Thank you very much.